The biting chill of early dawn crept into the city, wrapping the streets in a shroud of gray mist. Clara, a nurse who had dedicated her life to caring for others, found herself alone on the sidewalk, the world around her stirring awake, while she remained trapped in a haunting cycle of fatigue and despair. Just hours earlier, she had been a guardian of health, tending to the sick in the sterile, fluorescent-lit halls of St. Michael's Hospital. Now she was nothing more than a weary shell, worn down by the endless demands of her husband and the unyielding pressures of her job. As dawn broke, Clara's knees buckled, and she crumpled to the cold pavement, the gritty concrete bit into her skin, jarring her into a moment of clarity. She felt a wave of humiliation wash over her, melding with her weariness. It was not the first time she had fainted. Her body was a canvas of exhaustion painted with the strokes of a relentless existence. The haunting echoes of her husband's voice, laced with threats and belittlement, reverberated in her mind. "You're worthless," he often sneered, a cruel reminder of the worth she had lost in her desolate marriage. As she lay there, Clara's thoughts drifted back to her childhood. Memories of laughter and light flickered in the shadows of her mind. She remembered the spark in her mother's eyes as she recounted the stories of Florence Nightingale, tales that had inspired Clara to follow the path of nursing. Those days felt like a distant dream, vibrant and full of promise, now swallowed by a suffocating darkness. The soft, reassuring touch of her mother's hand lingered in her memory, a stark contrast to the oppressive grip of her husband's hold on her life. Clara had always been the kind of nurse who went the extra mile, the kind who stayed late to comfort a patient or brought homemade soup to someone too weak to leave their bed. Yet, the kindness she poured into her patients was an empty cup when it came to herself. She had become so entrenched in her role as a caretaker that she had allowed her own needs to wither away, leaving her vulnerable to the whims of her husband's cruelty. Each bruise on her heart was a mark of her silent suffering, unseen by the world that depended on her strength. "Clara, you're such a burden," he would say, the words cutting deeper than any physical blow could. Just the night before, he had thrown a glass at her during one of his drunken rages, shattering it against the wall. The shards reminded her of her own fragmented spirit, leaving her to pick up the pieces of her life alone. The irony was not lost on her. As a nurse, she bandaged others' wounds while her own remained festering, hidden beneath layers of shame and despair. As she lay there, tears streamed down her cheeks, mingling with the dirt on her face. The sounds of the waking city consumed her, the distant rumble of traffic, the rustle of leaves swayed by the wind, and the muted conversations of early commuters. Clara felt invisible, a ghost haunting the very life she had fought so hard to hold on to. She wished for someone, anyone, to notice her plight. But days had turned into weeks, and weeks into months, without a soul stopping to ask if she was all right. Her breath quickened, and for a moment, Clara struggled to comprehend her surroundings. Faces blurred as they passed by, indifferent to her fallen form. She curled into herself, trying to disappear from a world that had long forsaken her. Yet, just as the heavy weight of despair began to envelop her, she heard footsteps approaching. The sound was distinct, firm, cutting through the chaos of her thoughts. It drew her attention away from the darkness that threatened to consume her. Dr. Alexander Thornton wasn't just any surgeon. He was one of the most respected figures in the medical field, charismatic, wealthy, and known for his tireless dedication to his patients. He had just finished a late-night emergency surgery and had decided to take a walk to clear his mind before diving back into the hectic demands of the hospital. When he spotted Clara crumpled on the sidewalk, something within him stirred. His heart lurched at the sight of her, the way her body lay so still against the unforgiving pavement. Instinctively, he knelt beside her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders, careful not to invade her personal space. "Miss, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice soft but filled with urgency. The flicker of warmth in his gaze contrasted sharply with the cruel indifference of the world Clara had come to know. Clara blinked slowly, the world swirling into focus. The face before her was a mixture of concern and authority, an unexpected lifeline in her sea of despair. Through her foggy mind, she registered the crisp lines of his tailored coat, the light catching the edges of his tousled hair. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the genuine concern shining in his deep brown eyes, a stark reminder that she wasn't entirely invisible. I'm fine," Clara whispered, but the feeble protest fell from her lips like broken glass. The truth was, she felt anything but fine. The warmth radiating from him was foreign, and for a moment she wanted to bask in its comfort, but couldn't shake the feeling of unworthiness. Dr. Thornton observed her closely, discerning the subtle signs of distress that had little to do with her physical state. "You don't look fine," he replied gently. "Let me help you. You need medical attention." Clara's heart raced, caught between the instinct to resist help and the desperate yearning to accept it. She could feel the weight of his gaze searching for answers, and in that moment she felt both exposed and deeply understood. Fear gripped her. intertwined with the hope she had long since buried beneath the rubble of her life. The sounds of the city faded into the background, and as Dr. Alexander continued to speak, a flicker of something unfamiliar ignited within her, an ember of possibility. It was the same feeling she had when she first donned her nursing scrubs, the bittersweet realization that there might be more to life than what she had become accustomed to. The world around her still buzzed, and while Clara struggled to cling to this newfound feeling, a reality loomed large alongside it, one that could not be ignored. What if this moment of kindness was just an illusion? What if he discovered that she was nothing more than the broken woman her husband painted her to be, unworthy of compassion? Just then, a loud voice shattered the air, pulling her back from the precipice of newfound hope. "Clara!" The voice was unmistakable. Her husband was nearing, and in an instant, the warmth and light introduced to her were threatened by the dark shadows that loomed behind her. Dr. Alexander's expression shifted as he caught sight of the approaching figure, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Clara's heart sank, and she felt the weight of despair clawing at her again, but this time, along with it, a stubborn flicker of hope smoldered within her. She wasn't ready to give up just yet, not now. The tension in the air thickened, and as her husband closed the distance, Clara's breath caught in her throat. Would this be the moment that extinguished the fragile flame of hope Dr. Alexander had ignited, or could this powerful man somehow protect her from the darkness threatening to reclaim her? The battle raged within her as the world teetered dangerously on the edge of uncertainty. Dr. Alexander Thornton's heart raced as he knelt beside Clara, his hands hovering uncertainly above her, torn between the need to help and the reality of her plight. The world around them blurred into insignificance as he focused on her pale face, streaked with tears and dirt, a poignant reminder of the fragility of human life. He had just emerged from a grueling surgical procedure, his mind still heavy with the weight of saving lives. But now here was a woman who had fallen through the cracks of the very system he dedicated his life to uphold. "Clara, can you hear me?" he asked gently, his voice a stark contrast to the bustling city sounds enveloping them. She blinked slowly, her eyes struggling to focus, but the warmth of his presence began to break through the layers of despair that had wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she sensed a flicker of hope igniting within her, a glimmer of concern from someone who saw her, not as a burden, but as a person deserving of compassion. "Please, stay with me," Dr. Thornton urged, his tone firm yet soothing, as he reached for his phone to call for assistance. He shielded her from the gaze of passers-by, his broad shoulders blocking the curious and dismissive stares that had accompanied her fall. The cold asphalt beneath them felt unyielding, a harsh reminder of her reality, yet beneath the chill, he offered warmth, an unspoken promise that she would not be left alone. As the sirens approached, a wave of vulnerability washed over Clara. The weight of her struggles, the haunting echoes of her husband's taunts, and the isolation she had grown accustomed to flooded her mind. Yet, in this moment, she felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. Someone cared. Someone was here. She clung to the thought, willing it to grow stronger. "Just a few more moments, Clara," Dr. Thornton reassured her, his keen eyes scanning her face for any signs of awareness. "You're going to be okay. Help is on the way." The sincerity in his voice, coupled with the urgency of his presence, made her heart swell with a mix of fear and gratitude. She had spent so long feeling invisible, and now, here was a man who could change everything. As the paramedics arrived, their voices filled the air with professional urgency. But for Clara, it was Dr. Thornton's steady presence that anchored her. He remained by her side, offering calming words, his hand gently brushing against hers, a subtle gesture of support that spoke volumes. "Stay with me, Clara," he repeated, watching as the medics assessed her condition. "You're a fighter, I can tell." His words were not just empty platitudes. They were rooted in the strength he had witnessed in countless patients who battled against the odds. Clara's eyes met his, and she searched for the strength to respond, to affirm that she was still there, still fighting. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, the world began to spin again. The familiar, sterile scent of antiseptic filled her nostrils, a scent she had once associated with safety and healing. But now it felt laced with a sense of confusion and vulnerability. She was being taken back to the place where she had so often given her all, yet had never expected to find herself as a patient. Dr. Thornton walked alongside the stretcher, his brow furrowed in thought. He had seen many patients over the years, but Clara's condition tugged at his heartstrings differently. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was a deeper story behind her weariness, a narrative woven into the fabric of her life that needed unraveling. "Clara, I want you to know that I'm going to look into this," he said as they entered the hospital, his voice low and earnest. "Whatever is going on, we'll find a way to help you." His words were a promise, a vow that he would not let her slip through the cracks like so many others had. She offered a weak nod, gratitude spilling from her eyes. As they wheeled her into the emergency room, the bright lights felt blinding, and the sound of medical commotion enveloped her. She was surrounded by strangers, yet with Dr. Thornton's reassuring presence, she felt a sense of safety within the chaos. "Get her vitals and prepare an IV," a nurse called, and Clara felt the gentle prick of a needle, the cool fluid coursing through her veins, a stark contrast to the warmth of Dr. Thornton's hand still resting on hers. As they worked, she briefly closed her eyes, allowing herself to succumb to the exhaustion that had haunted her for so long. "Clara," Dr. Thornton said softly, and she opened her eyes to find him watching her intently, concern etched in his features. "I need you to trust me. I'm going to do everything I can to help you get back on your feet." The sincerity in his gaze ignited a flicker of strength within her. Perhaps she could trust him. Perhaps this was the moment where everything could begin to change. The thought was fragile but beautiful, like the first light of dawn breaking through a long night. As they continued to assess her condition, Dr. Thornton's mind raced with possibilities. He had seen too many patients whose stories remained buried beneath layers of shame and fear. Clara was more than just another case to him. She was a person in need, and the thought of how she had fallen through the cracks of the very system that was meant to protect her stirred a fierce determination within him. He would not let her fight this battle alone. "Where do you live, Clara?" he asked gently, hoping for a glimpse into her life beyond the hospital walls. Her hesitation spoke volumes, and he could sense the familiar pain of isolation that clung to her words. "Is there anyone we can contact?" Clara hesitated, the shadows of her past creeping in. "My husband, he's..." She faltered, the weight of her reality crashing back over her. He's not kind." Dr. Thornton's expression hardened, the flicker of anger igniting within him. The thought of someone treating her with cruelty ignited a fire in his chest. "You're safe here, Clara. No one will hurt you." Just as he spoke those words, a commotion erupted at the entrance of the emergency room. Clara's heart sank as she recognized a familiar voice piercing through the chaos. "Where is she?" It was her husband, his voice laced with anger and entitlement. "What have you done to her?" Dr. Thornton turned sharply, his protective instincts flaring as he faced the man who had caused Clara so much pain. "You need to leave," he said firmly, stepping in front of Clara, a barrier against the storm that threatened to invade her newfound safety. "She's under my care now." Clara's pulse quickened, a mix of dread and relief flooding her senses. The very presence of her husband was a haunting reminder of her past, and in this moment, she felt torn between the safety of Dr. Thornton and the chaos that was about to unfold. The air felt thick with tension, a palpable charge that sent shivers down her spine. This was the moment of confrontation, a collision of worlds that would test Clara's strength and resolve. Would she allow the shadows of her past to consume her once more, or could she summon the courage to embrace the light of a new beginning? As Clara slowly stirred, her eyelids fluttered like the wings of a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. The sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with the faint, comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from somewhere nearby. She blinked against the harsh overhead lights, her mind swimming in a haze of confusion and fear. Where was she? The last thing she remembered was the cold asphalt beneath her, the distant sounds of a bustling city fading into nothingness. Now, the beeping of machines and the muffled voices of nurses filled the air around her. "Clara, can you hear me?" Dr. Alexander Thornton's voice broke through the fog, warm and steady. Relief washed over her at the sound of his familiar tone. She turned her head slightly, her eyes landing on his concerned face, the shadows of worry etched into his brow. The sight of him brought a flicker of safety to her heart. "You're in the hospital. You fainted," he explained gently, kneeling beside her bed. His presence a calming anchor in the chaos of her racing thoughts. "Dr. Thornton," Clara whispered, her voice hoarse, a fragile sound that felt foreign to her own ears. "What happened?" "You were exhausted, Clara. Your body finally protested. You've been pushing yourself too hard," he replied, the concern in his eyes deepening. "You need to take care of yourself. I know how hard that is for you, but it's vital." She felt a lump in her throat as memories of her husband's harsh words crept back in, those relentless reminders of her inadequacy. "I'm sorry," she murmured, guilt creeping in like a shadow. "I didn't mean to..." "Shh," he interrupted softly, placing a gentle hand on hers. "You don't need to apologize. You've been through so much. It's time to focus on you." The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her, dissolving some of the ice that had formed around her heart. In that moment, Clara felt an unfamiliar sensation. Trust. Dr. Thornton settled into a chair beside her, his attentive gaze never leaving her face. "I want to help you, Clara. I see the strength in you, even if you can't see it yourself. But you have to let me in." Clara hesitated, her heart racing. Could she open up to him? But the sincerity in his eyes urged her to share the weight she had been carrying for so long. It's hard to talk about, she confessed, her voice trembling. My marriage, it's suffocating. She paused, struggling to find the right words. He doesn't see me. He only sees his expectations, and I can't keep up anymore. Tell me, Dr. Thornton encouraged, leaning forward slightly, his expression a blend of empathy and determination. You're safe here. With a deep breath, Clara poured out her heart, the words tumbling from her lips like a long-held breath. She spoke of the late-night arguments, the emotional manipulation, and the feeling of being trapped in a life that had once felt full of promise. As she spoke, tears pooled in her eyes, and she felt a release, a loosening of the bonds that had held her captive. I don't know how to escape, she admitted, her voice breaking. I feel like I'm drowning, and I can't find the surface. Dr. Thornton's expression hardened slightly as he listened, a flicker of anger crossing his face. You're not alone anymore, Clara, he said firmly, his voice steady. I'll help you find a way out. We'll figure this out together. You deserve to be free. His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and for the first time in years, Clara allowed herself to hope. You really mean that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Absolutely, he replied, his tone unwavering. But you need to trust me. We'll develop a plan, but I need you to be honest about everything. We can't afford any surprises. Clara nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words settle into her heart. She could feel the stirrings of resolve, a determination to reclaim her life. I promise, she said, her voice stronger now. I'll do whatever it takes. As they spoke, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A nurse entered the room, her demeanor brisk but kind. Dr. Thornton, we need to discuss Clara's discharge, she said, glancing at Clara with a reassuring smile. I'll give you two a moment. Once the door clicked shut, Dr. Thornton turned back to Clara, his expression serious. I want to make sure you have everything you need. We'll set up a safe space for you where you can stay away from him. I'll cover the costs, and I have resources that can help you find a job. You'll be taken care of. Why are you doing all of this? Clara asked, a mix of gratitude and confusion swirling within her. You don't even know me. His gaze softened and he leaned closer, his voice low and earnest. Because I can't stand the thought of anyone suffering alone. You deserve to be treated with kindness, not just by me, but by everyone in your life. You're worth it, Clara. A tear slipped down her cheek as she absorbed his words. In that moment, she realized that the walls she had built around herself were beginning to crumble, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of hope. Thank you, she whispered, her heart swelling with emotion. Let's focus on the next steps, he replied, his demeanor shifting back to that of a determined advocate. I'll arrange the paperwork for your discharge, and then we can get you settled somewhere safe. Meanwhile, we need to be cautious. I have a feeling your husband won't take kindly to this. Just as he spoke, the door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped into the room. Clara's heart sank as she recognized the imposing silhouette of her husband, Michael. His eyes narrowed as they locked onto her, the familiar flicker of anger igniting within them. Clara, what are you doing here? He snapped, his voice sharp and accusatory. Dr. Thornton stood protectively in front of Clara, his expression shifting to one of concern. She's recovering. You can't be here right now. Michael's jaw clenched, and Clara felt the tension in the room spike. I don't care what you think, he barked, his eyes drilling into Clara. You're coming home with me. Now. Fear washed over Clara, but alongside it came a surge of defiance. She had made a promise to herself, and now she was ready to stand her ground. She glanced at Dr. Thornton, who met her gaze with a reassuring nod. No, Clara said, her voice trembling but more resolute than it had ever been. I'm not going back. The atmosphere in the room thickened with tension, and Clara felt the shift in her husband's demeanor, the way his anger coiled tightly around him. Dr. Thornton positioned himself as a barrier between them, a protective shield against the storm that was about to erupt. As she looked into her husband's eyes, Clara felt the stakes rising, her past, her future, and her newfound determination colliding in a moment that would define everything. Clara's heart raced as she lay in the hospital bed, her mind swirling with emotions that had long been buried beneath the weight of her daily struggles. As Dr. Alexander Thornton rose from his chair, the determination in his eyes ignited a spark of hope within her. She watched him as he stepped out of the room, feeling an unexpected surge of empowerment at the thought of him confronting her husband. The crisp, sterile walls of the hospital began to fade in her mind, replaced by the image of her husband, Michael, looming over her like a dark cloud. His voice, sharp and biting, echoed in her memory. You're never good enough, he would sneer, words like daggers piercing through her self-worth. But now, with Dr. Thornton's support, the chains of her past felt a little less constraining. Moments later, Clara could hear the muffled voices approaching her room, the tension palpable in the air. The door swung open, and there stood Dr. Thornton, Flanked by a tall, imposing figure, Michael's presence filled the space like a thunderstorm, his expression a mix of confusion and anger as he regarded the doctor. "What's going on here?" Michael's tone was dangerously calm, a mask hiding the storm brewing beneath. Clara's breath hitched in her throat, the dread of his reaction causing her heart to pound against her ribcage. "Mr. Thompson," Dr. Thornton began, his voice steady and authoritative, "I need to speak with you about your wife." He stepped closer, the air crackling with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Michael's eyes narrowed, a flicker of defensiveness crossing his features. "What do you know about my wife?" he spat, dismissing Dr. Thornton as if he were a mere nuisance. "She's just being dramatic, as usual. This is nothing." Dr. Thornton did not waver. "Clara is not being dramatic," he asserted, his voice unwavering. "She fainted from exhaustion, and I know it's not just physical fatigue. It's the emotional toll you've placed upon her." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the air, and Clara could see Michael's facade start to crack. "How dare you?" Michael's voice rose, a sharp edge to his words that sent shivers down Clara's spine. "You don't know a thing about our life. You're just a doctor playing the hero." His eyes darted to Clara, as if searching for a chink in her newfound resolve. "Clara, tell him he's wrong. You don't need anyone to fight your battles for you." In that moment, Clara felt a wave of clarity wash over her. The years of belittlement, the feelings of inadequacy, all came rushing back. But this time, they did not define her. She lifted her chin, meeting Dr. Thornton's supportive gaze before turning to face Michael, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "No, Michael, I won't be silent anymore." Her declaration hung in the air, a fragile yet defiant tremor. "You've made me feel like I'm nothing, but I am worth more than your cruel words." The realization echoed in her mind. She was no longer just a shadow in her own life. Michael's face contorted into a mask of rage. "You're being influenced by this man? You think you can just leave me? You think anyone else would want you?" His voice dripped with venom, each word designed to cut deep. Clara felt the sting of his words, but this time, instead of cowering, she held her ground. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," Clara replied, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and newfound strength. "I want to be free from this. I deserve to be happy." Each word felt like a stone, reverberating with truth. Dr. Thornton stepped in, his presence a protective barrier. "Michael, this needs to stop. Clara deserves respect, not manipulation. I have seen the toll this relationship has taken on her, and I refuse to let you continue this abuse. You need to let her go." Michael's eyes flared with indignation, the color draining from his face as he realized the gravity of the situation. "You think you can just walk in here and dictate my life? You know nothing of our marriage?" She's confused. His voice was a rising tide of denial, desperate to drown out the truth. Clara's heart sank. The fear of being dismissed again threatened to engulf her. "No, Michael, I'm not confused. I've been living in a fog for too long, and I can finally see clearly." The conviction in her voice surprised even her, a flicker of resilience igniting within. In the tense silence that followed, a storm brewed in Michael's eyes, and Clara braced herself for the backlash. "You're making a mistake, Clara," he spat, his voice low and dangerous. "You'll regret this." As he turned to leave, she felt the weight of his threat linger in the air, heavy and oppressive. But with Dr. Thornton beside her, she sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a promise of protection. Clara noticed the way the doctor's gaze remained firm, unwavering, as if he were ready to shield her from any further harm. "Don't you dare try to manipulate her like you always do," Dr. Thornton warned, his voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. "You will not intimidate her anymore." Michael paused at the door, his back to them, and Clara could sense the tension sparking in the air. "We'll see about that," he muttered, his tone filled with menace before he stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him. Clara took a shuddering breath, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. In that moment she felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, turning to Dr. Thornton, her voice trembling with gratitude and disbelief. "I didn't think I could stand up to him." He offered her a reassuring smile, the warmth of his presence soothing her frayed nerves. "You're stronger than you realize, Clara. I'll always be here to support you." Just then, a nurse entered the room, her expression shifting from concern to confusion as she took in the remnants of the confrontation. Clara felt a pang of anxiety at the thought of her husband's wrath, but Dr. Thornton's presence reassured her. "We need to talk about a plan," he said, drawing her attention back to the moment. "We can't let him manipulate you again." But as Clara nodded, a deep sense of unease settled in her stomach. She knew Michael wouldn't give up easily, and the battle had just begun. Clara stepped through the grand entrance of Dr. Alexander Thornton's home, her heart racing with a mix of awe and disbelief. The warmth enveloped her like a soft embrace, the richness of the surroundings contrasting sharply with the coldness she'd come to associate with her life. Each step felt surreal as the lavish decor and the scent of fresh flowers greeted her, almost as if she had crossed into another world, one where kindness reigned instead of cruelty. The high ceilings arched above her, adorned with intricate moldings that whispered of elegance and care. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a golden glow on the polished wooden floors. Clara's fingers brushed against the smooth surface of a gleaming table, a stark reminder of how far removed she felt from such beauty. She hesitated at the threshold, feeling like an intruder in this sanctuary of affluence, her heart pounding wildly as thoughts of her old life clawed at the edges of her mind. "Come in, Clara," Dr. Thornton prompted gently, his voice pulling her from her reverie. He stood beside her, a reassuring presence that seemed to anchor her in this unfamiliar space. "You're safe here." His words washed over her, soothing the frayed edges of her anxiety. Yet a heavy cloud of doubt lingered within her. Did she truly deserve this kindness? Could she believe that she was worthy of such care after years of being belittled and suffocated by Michael's relentless criticism? As Clara stepped deeper into the home, the sound of laughter from the adjoining room caught her attention. It was a warm, inviting sound that tugged at her heartstrings. She turned to see a young boy, perhaps around the age of 10, playing with a golden retriever, the two of them tumbling over one another in a joyous mess. The sight stirred something within Clara, a longing for happiness, a simple joy that had been absent from her life for so long. She felt a pang of envy mixed with hope. Could she ever experience such unadulterated joy again? "Clara, this is my son, Jamie," Dr. Thornton said, a proud smile spreading across his face as he gestured toward the playful duo. "He's been looking forward to meeting you." "Hi, Clara," Jamie called out, his bright eyes sparkling with excitement. "You're going to love it here." Clara managed a shy smile, her heart swelling at the innocent enthusiasm radiating from the boy. She hesitated, unsure of how to engage with the child, but there was something in Jamie's openness that made her want to reach out. Dr. Thornton encouraged her with a nod, and Clara felt her defenses slowly begin to crumble as she knelt beside the boy. "Hello, Jamie," she replied, her voice soft yet steadier than she anticipated. "I'm glad to be here." He grinned, showcasing a gap where a tooth had fallen out. "We have a trampoline in the backyard. Do you like jumping?" His excitement was infectious, and Clara felt a flicker of warmth spark within her, something she hadn't felt in ages. The thought of laughter and play seemed so foreign, yet so inviting. "Yes, I love jumping," she responded, her heart lightening at the prospect. But as quickly as the joy emerged, shadows of doubt loomed over her. Would she be able to embrace this new life? Would she always feel like a fraud, undeserving of this kindness? Dr. Thornton watched them with a knowing look, an understanding flickering in his eyes. "Why don't you two head outside?" he suggested. "I'll prepare something for us to eat. You both must be starving." Clara nodded, her heart racing again, this time with anticipation. She followed Jamie outside, stepping into the lush, manicured garden that sprawled before her. The sun cast a gentle warmth on her skin, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the rays wash over her. It felt so different from the bitterness of her past. "Do you want to jump first?" Jamie asked, bouncing on his toes with eagerness. "Sure," Clara replied, allowing herself to be swept up in the boy's excitement. They approached the trampoline, and she felt a thrill of childlike joy as she climbed onto the bouncy surface. The moment she began to jump, laughter bubbled up from within her, a sound she hadn't made in years. Yet, as Clara leaped higher, the memories of Michael's harsh words crept back in, casting a shadow over her elation. "You'll never be happy," he had sneered countless times. "You don't deserve it." Each bounce felt like a battle against those words, and she struggled to push them away. But the laughter of Jamie, the warmth of the sun, and the kindness of Dr. Thornton were all beacons of hope. Slowly, she began to believe she could carve out a new existence. As they played, the echoes of her past loomed large in her mind. Michael's voice was a relentless whisper, reminding her that this happiness was fleeting, that she was merely a fool for thinking she could escape him. She shook her head, refusing to let his negativity seep into this moment. After some time, they collapsed onto the grass, breathless and giggling. Clara looked at Jamie, who was lying beside her, his face flushed with joy. "See? I knew you'd like it," he exclaimed, his smile infectious. "I did, Jamie," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude for this small moment of bliss. Yet a nagging worry tugged at her. Would Michael attempt to drag her back into the darkness? Would he come to reclaim the power he once held over her? Just then, a shadow crossed her thoughts, and her heart skipped a beat as she remembered the confrontation at the hospital. Michael's anger had been palpable, a tempest waiting to unleash. She could already feel his presence looming like a storm cloud overhead, threatening to shatter this newfound happiness. Dr. Thornton appeared at the doorway, a plate of food in his hands. I hope you're both hungry, he called out, his voice filled with warmth as he made his way toward them. Clara's stomach growled in response, and she felt a wave of relief wash over her, grateful for the simple act of sharing a meal. But as they gathered around the table outside, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of unease settling in her chest. The laughter and warmth surrounding her felt fragile, as if the slightest gust of wind could blow it all away. She glanced at Dr. Thornton, who caught her gaze, his eyes searching hers. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Clara forced a smile, but inside she felt a tempest brewing. "I'm just trying to adjust," she admitted, her voice wavering slightly. "It's all so overwhelming." Dr. Thornton nodded, understanding etched in his features. "It's normal to feel that way, Clara. You've been through so much." He paused, the weight of his words lingering in the air. "But you're safe here. You deserve to find your happiness." In that moment, Clara felt a flicker of hope igniting within her once more. Perhaps she could forge a new path, one away from the shadows of her past. But just as she began to believe in the possibility of happiness, the sound of her phone vibrating on the table sent a jolt of anxiety through her. She glanced at the screen and her heart sank. It was a message from Michael. "Where are you?" it read, the words sending a chill down her spine. An ominous reminder that he was still a part of her life, lurking on the edges, ready to disrupt her fragile peace. Dr. Thornton noticed her expression shift, the warmth of the moment dissipating as dread washed over her. "Clara?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" Clara's hand shook as she clutched the phone tightly, the reality of her situation crashing down upon her like a wave. "It's Michael," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's trying to reach me." Dr. Thornton's expression hardened, his protective instincts kicking in. "You don't have to answer him. You're not obligated to respond to someone who hurts you." But Clara felt the weight of his words and the reality of her situation pressing down on her. She took a deep breath, the warmth of the sun now feeling distant and cold. "I know," she replied, her voice trembling with uncertainty, "but he won't let me go easily." As she stared at the screen, a storm brewed inside her, the fear of her past colliding with the hope of her present. Would she be able to stand strong against Michael's impending storm? As the tension hung heavy in the air, Clara knew the battle was far from over, and she would have to summon every ounce of strength to protect her newfound happiness. The shadows of her past were not ready to release their grip, and as Clara faced the uncertainty ahead, she could only hope that the light of her new life would be enough to guide her through the darkness that threatened to engulf her once more. Clara had barely settled into the warmth of Dr. Thornton's home when she felt the chill of reality creep back in. As Jamie's laughter danced around her, a nagging sense of foreboding tugged at her heart. She had just begun to feel a semblance of safety, yet that fragile foundation was threatened by the persistent shadow of Michael. The memory of his harsh words reverberated in her mind like an echo, reminding her that she was not truly free. It was during the playful antics outside, where sunlight bathed the garden in a golden hue, that she felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. The electronic hum felt out of place in this sanctuary of warmth, but Clara didn't dare ignore it. She glanced at Dr. Thornton, who was watching Jamie bounce on the trampoline with a smile, and then she pulled out her phone, her heart sinking as she saw Michael's name flash across the screen. "Clara," she whispered to herself, a cold tremor coursing through her as she opened the message. The words were blunt and menacing, a stark reminder of the leverage he believed he held over her. "You have until the end of the week to return home or you'll regret it. I will make sure you suffer the consequences of your defiance." The message felt like a knife, slicing through her newfound sense of security. She felt the tremors of fear clawing at her insides, her breath quickening as she struggled to comprehend the implications. "Clara?" Dr. Thornton's voice sliced through her spiraling thoughts. He approached her, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" Clara, caught between the warmth of the sun and the icy grip of her husband's words, hesitated. How could she explain the suffocating weight of her past, the darkness that had tainted every moment of her life? She clutched her phone tightly, the screen glowing with Michael's threat like a sinister beacon. It's nothing," she stammered, but the lie felt heavy on her tongue. "Don't hide it from me," he urged gently, his expression softening. "You can trust me, Clara. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." His sincerity peeled away the layers of her fear, and for the first time, Clara felt a flicker of strength stirring within her. "It's my husband," she admitted, her voice trembling as she handed him the phone. He wants me to come back. He's threatening me if I don't." Dr. Thornton's eyes darkened as he read the message, his jaw tightening with a mix of anger and concern. "Clara, this is serious. You can't go back to him. He's manipulating you. This isn't love. It's control." The warmth of his words wrapped around her like a protective cocoon. Clara's heart raced as she recognized the truth in his voice, the truth she had been denying for far too long. "But what can I do?" she whispered, tears threatening to spill over. "He's powerful, and he knows how to twist everything to his advantage. I feel trapped." Dr. Thornton's hand found hers, his touch warm and reassuring. "You're not trapped anymore, Clara," he said firmly. "We'll come up with a plan. I won't let him harm you. You deserve to feel safe and happy." The sincerity in his voice ignited a spark of hope within her, pulling her from the depths of despair. Clara took a deep breath, allowing the gravity of her situation to settle in. "I've been so afraid," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of what he might do, afraid of what I might lose." Dr. Thornton nodded, understanding flooding his gaze. "You're stronger than you realize. You've already taken the first step by leaving him. Let's build on that strength. We can get a restraining order, and I can help you find legal representation. You won't have to face this alone." The sense of determination in his tone resonated deep within her, sparking a burgeoning courage. "You really think I can do this?" she asked, a hint of disbelief coloring her voice. "I know you can," he replied, his grip on her hand tightening ever so slightly. "You've endured so much already. This is just one more hurdle, and I'll be here to help you clear it." Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, intertwining with the fear still lurking in the corners of her mind. She had entered this home feeling small and insignificant, but now, with Dr. Thornton's support, she felt a shift, a flicker of empowerment igniting her spirit. "Thank you," she murmured, her heart swelling with appreciation. Jamie's laughter echoed in the distance, a reminder of the innocence and joy that had been so absent from her life. She watched the boy as he bounced with abandon, the golden retriever chasing after him. For a moment, the weight of her fears lifted, and she allowed herself to imagine a life filled with laughter and love, untainted by darkness. But as the shadows of doubt crept back in, she felt the icy grip of Michael's threats lingering in her mind. The battle was far from over, and Clara knew she would have to summon every ounce of courage she possessed to face the man who had held her captive for so long. Just then, a sudden rustling sound interrupted her reverie, drawing her attention back to the present. Clara turned her gaze toward the garden gate, her heart racing as she spotted a familiar figure standing at the entrance. It was Michael, his presence looming ominously in the sunlight, the shadows of danger cloaking him like a shroud. "Clara!" he called out, his voice smooth yet laced with an undercurrent of menace. "I knew you'd be here." Time slowed as Clara's heart raced, the warmth of Dr. Thornton's home fading into a chilling reality. Fear gripped her once more, but she felt a flicker of resolve rising within her. She would not allow him to take away her newfound strength. Not now, not ever. "Stay behind me, Clara," Dr. Thornton commanded softly, his protective stance a barrier between her and the threat that loomed over them. Clara's breath hitched in her throat, adrenaline flooding her veins as she prepared to confront the past she thought she had escaped. The moment of truth had come, and she was ready to reclaim her life. Clara stood at the threshold of Dr. Thornton's home, the warmth of the space wrapping around her like a blanket, but the chill of her reality lingered just outside the door. The laughter of Jamie, innocent and carefree, echoed through the halls, a stark contrast to the turmoil that simmered within her. She wanted to embrace this new life, to lose herself in the joy that surrounded her. Yet the shadows of her past loomed large, casting an oppressive weight over her heart. As she watched Jamie chase butterflies in the garden, her mind drifted back to the chilling words of Michael. The thread he had delivered felt like a noose tightening around her neck, and despite the comfort of this sanctuary, she could still feel the cold fingers of fear gripping her. Dr. Thornton's kindness had provided a flicker of hope, a beacon in her darkest hours, yet Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she was merely biding her time. "Clara?" Dr. Thornton's voice intruded upon her thoughts, pulling her back into the present. He stood beside her, concern etched into his features. "Are you okay? You seemed a million miles away." She forced a smile, the effort feeling heavy on her lips. "I'm just processing everything," she replied, the weight of her words barely registering. "Come on," he said gently, motioning toward the kitchen. "Let's get you something to eat. You need to nourish yourself." Clara nodded, grateful for his concern, and followed him into the kitchen, where the aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air. The sight of the sun-drenched space made her heart ache with a longing for normalcy, a feeling she had almost forgotten. The kitchen was adorned with bright flowers, and the wooden table was set for a meal, a stark reminder of the life she yearned for, but had lost. As they settled at the table, Clara felt the weight of Dr. Thornton's gaze, probing yet gentle. "You're safe here, Clara. I want you to know that," he said, his tone firm yet reassuring. But as she picked at her meal, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. "What if he finds me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael has resources, connections. He won't let me go easily. Dr. Thornton leaned closer, his voice low and steady. I've dealt with people like him before. We'll take precautions. I have a few contacts who can help us. The assurance in his voice wrapped around her, but the unease in her heart refused to dissipate. I don't want to be a burden, she murmured, the guilt creeping in as the reality of her situation weighed heavily on her. You're not a burden, Clara, Dr. Thornton replied, his tone sharp yet compassionate. You've been through hell, and you deserve help. Let me assist you in this fight. You're not alone anymore. A flicker of hope ignited within her, battling against the shadows of doubt. It was a small spark, but it was enough to remind her that she was worth fighting for. Okay, she said slowly, allowing the warmth of his words to seep into her soul. What do we do next? Dr. Thornton began to outline a plan, his demeanor shifting into that of a determined protector. He explained how they would seek legal counsel, file a restraining order, and gather evidence against Michael's threats. Clara listened intently, her heart swelling with a mix of fear and determination. For the first time, she felt like she was taking control of her life rather than letting it spiral out of her hands. But just as her spirit began to lift, the picturesque scene shattered. Clara's phone buzzed again, the vibration shattering the fragile peace that had settled over them. She glanced at the screen, her stomach dropping as she saw Michael's name once more. Not now, she whispered, panic rising in her chest. Dr. Thornton's expression shifted to one of concern, and he reached for her hand. You don't have to look at it. You can ignore him. But Clara's fingers trembled as she opened the message, dread pooling in her stomach like a stone. I know where you are, it read. You can't hide from me. If you think you can run, you'll only make it worse for yourself. Clara's breath hitched, her heart racing as reality crashed down upon her. He found me, she gasped, her mind racing with the implications. Dr. Thornton's grip tightened around her hand, his eyes blazing with protective fury. We'll figure this out, Clara. Stay calm. He can't touch you here. But he knows, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. He knows I'm not with him anymore. He'll come for me. We'll be ready, Dr. Thornton declared, his voice steady and resolute. I can increase security around the house. I'll contact the police, make them aware of the situation. We won't let him intimidate you. Clara felt the swirling chaos of her emotions, fear battling against the flicker of hope ignited by Dr. Thornton's determination. The walls of her past were closing in, and she could almost hear Michael's laughter mocking her, echoing in the dark corners of her mind. But there was something within her that fought back, an ember of strength that refused to be extinguished. I won't be his victim anymore, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. I want to fight. Dr. Thornton's gaze softened, pride radiating from him. That's the spirit, Clara. We'll do this together. But as they discussed their next steps, the air thickened with tension, the shadows of her past creeping closer. The threat of Michael hung over them like a storm cloud ready to burst, the calm before the inevitable tempest. Clara could feel it, the anxiety coiling tight in her chest, a warning that the confrontation was drawing near. Just as they began to formulate a strategy, the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the house, a sharp reminder of the world outside their cocoon of safety. Clara froze, the blood draining from her face. Stay here, Dr. Thornton commanded, his voice low and authoritative. He stood, his expression turning serious. Clara's heart raced as he moved toward the door, her mind racing with possibilities. What if it was Michael? What if the fragile security they had constructed was about to shatter? Dr. Thornton, she called, panic surging within her. What if it's him? He turned back, his eyes steady and reassuring. I'll handle it. Just stay back. Clara felt her breath quicken as he opened the door, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. The moment felt suspended in time, each second stretching into eternity as the reality of her situation loomed ominously. She could only watch, a spectator to the unfolding chaos, as the door swung open, revealing the figure that would change everything. In that instant, Clara knew the confrontation was no longer a distant threat. It was here, knocking at her door, a harbinger of the storm that was about to break. Clara's heart raced as she stood frozen in the kitchen, the vibrant colors of the flowers around her, suddenly dulled by the weight of the impending confrontation. The message from Michael still flashed ominously in her mind, a stark reminder that her past was not far behind. Just as she began to process the warmth of Dr. Thornton's presence, the doorbell rang, slicing through the tranquility like a knife. Dr. Thornton's expression shifted from concern to alertness. Stay here, he instructed, his voice low and firm as he stepped toward the door. Clara's breath quickened, panic clawing at her throat. She could feel the air thicken with tension, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The thought of Michael standing on the other side made her stomach churn. Dr. Thornton, she called out, her voice trembling. What if it's him? Just breathe, he replied, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. I'll handle it. Clara watched as he approached the door, her hands trembling in her lap. She could hear the low murmur of voices, and then the sound of the door opening. "What do you want, Michael?" Dr. Thornton's voice was steady, but Clara could hear the underlying tension. "Where's Clara?" Michael's voice was cold, slicing through the air with a menacing edge. "I know she's here." Clara's heart dropped. She felt as if the walls were closing in on her, the warmth of the kitchen now suffocating. She edged closer to the doorway, her curiosity mingling with fear. Dr. Thornton stood firm, a protective barrier between her and the man who had caused her so much pain. "She's safe, and she doesn't want to see you," Dr. Thornton replied, his tone resolute. Clara could picture him standing tall, his presence commanding, a stark contrast to the man who had once loomed over her life. "Safe?" Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it, just a chilling derision. "You think you can protect her from me? She's my wife. I have every right to see her." Clara's breath hitched. The words hung in the air, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. She wanted to scream that she was no longer his, that she was reclaiming her life, but the fear of what he might do silenced her. "Rights?" Dr. Thornton shot back, his voice rising. "You've abused that right for far too long. You don't get to dictate what happens to her anymore." Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, but it quickly dimmed as Michael's voice turned icy. "You don't know what you're getting into, Thornton. If you think you can protect her, you're wrong. I have resources. I have connections. I will make this difficult for both of you." Clara's heart sank. The threat was clear, and she could feel the walls of her newfound sanctuary trembling under the weight of his words. She gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, her knuckles turning white as she fought against the rising tide of panic. "Clara deserves better than what you've given her," Dr. Thornton replied, his voice unwavering. "You've made her life a living hell, and it stops now." The tension in the room crackled like static electricity. Clara could hear her own heartbeat, each thump echoing in her ears as she stood on the precipice of uncertainty. She wanted to run to Dr. Thornton, to hide behind him, but her feet felt glued to the floor. "Let me talk to her," Michael insisted, his tone shifting as desperation seeped into his voice. "She needs to see reason. I can help her." Clara's stomach turned at the thought. "Help?" The word felt like a poison on his lips. "I can't go back," she whispered to herself, the reality of her situation crashing down around her. She had fought so hard to escape, and the thought of returning to that life was unbearable. Dr. Thornton's voice rose again, a shield against the darkness. "You don't get to manipulate her anymore. She's not your pawn." Clara felt a surge of gratitude for the man standing before her, willing to fight for her when she felt so weak. Yet the fear of Michael's threats loomed large, casting a shadow over their resolve. "Clara," Michael called, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "You need to come out. This isn't a game. You're making a mistake." Clara's heart raced, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She had to decide, would she let Dr. Thornton protect her? Or would she confront her husband, face the monster that had haunted her for so long? "Clara, you need to make a choice," Dr. Thornton said gently, turning his gaze towards her. "You can stay hidden, or you can stand up for yourself. I'll be right here with you." The sincerity in his eyes broke through the fog of fear that enveloped her. Clara took a deep breath, summoning the courage that had been buried for so long. "I can't let him control me anymore," she thought. "I'm coming out," Clara finally declared, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. She stepped forward, determination flooding her veins. As she moved toward the door, she could feel Dr. Thornton's presence beside her, a silent promise of support. "Clara, no." Michael's voice turned sharp, panic slicing through his tone. "Don't do this." But Clara was already stepping into the light, ready to face her past and reclaim her future. The door swung open, revealing the confrontation she had dreaded for so long. "Clara," Michael said, his voice low and dangerous, "you don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," she replied, her voice unwavering as she stood her ground. "I'm taking back my life." The air crackled with tension, the stakes higher than ever. Clara felt the weight of her decision settle around her like armor. No more running, no more hiding. She was ready to confront the demons of her past, and with Dr. Thornton by her side, she knew she had the strength to fight back. But just as she prepared for the battle ahead, a shadow moved behind Michael, a figure emerging from the darkness that sent chills down Clara's spine. It was someone she never expected to see again, someone who could change everything. "Clara, wait!" the voice called, sending her heart racing once more as the cliffhanger of her new reality loomed before her.